heat is still on.
Massive game.
New Zealand to win.
Great kick.
It's been a terrible year for little Wallabies.
We're missing an injection of life.
Stupid guys think they're so good.
Hello and welcome to episode 244 of RuggaMatrix International. I'm your host, Jero Sen, joined as always by Ben Kimber. G'day, Benny.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very good. Wow, the Lions series. It is tied up 1-1. Before we get to the issue of the week, you must be pretty excited with that result.
I am excited. I am. I said from the start, I want a competition. I want to go into the third test, see a last-minute victory to one of these sides. So I wanted to see the Lions win that one, so we put some heat, pressure and excitement around Game 3.
All right, absolutely. This is our second recording of this show this week, but we're going to get on with a strike issue of the week. What is Ben Kimber's strike issue of the week?
Strike issue of the week, my friend. This week, of course, the massive game, All Blacks Lions, 24-21 to the Lions. Drama in the wet, cards, a whole lot of stuff going on. But I think the issue of the week, throwing forward to Game 3, is you and I like to talk about false form. Based on the fact that they lost Sonny Bill Williams, based on the fact they played with 14 men for the 25-minute mark onward, is it false form for the Lions going into Game 3, or are they a chance of taking the All Blacks on properly to claim this series?
Oh, it's a big question. False form has been a bit of a theme for us, particularly when we talked about the All Blacks playing against some sides that probably aren't up to it. However, and also the Lions with pre-season tour form, I would say that it's a little bit of false form from the Lions because of a couple of reasons. One is the send-off. Secondly, the wet conditions. And thirdly, tactically, New Zealand weren't up to their usual high standard. So back to you, mate.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say it's not false form. I think it's definitely going to play into the Lions' hands to have a victory whichever way it came. And you have to also look at the fact that in that first 25-minute period, I thought, before they went down to 14 men, the Lions looked the better side. Like, there were certainly things that were keeping the All Blacks in touch, and the All Blacks have a history of fighting their way back into games and waiting for their moments to strike. But genuinely, for that 25-minute period and then after, the Lions looked like a team that had found another step. We talked about them having to build into a series. That first test, the games leading up, the second test, trying to find more of their mojo. I think they found more mojo. Some of the changes Gatland made had a big impact, and they were a team that I thought looked up for it. Now, I'm not saying that means they're going to win Game 3, but I certainly think it means, rather than false form, the win is a big fill-up to what they're trying to achieve, and it's going to put them in good steading in Auckland. All right.
So should we get actually into the game itself? Because we need to do that to determine indeed if that false form is the case. So it was a narrow victory to the Lions, and it came right down to the last moment, but it was 2-0 in favour of the Lions. That is a big tick for the Lions.
It is a big tick. Two tries to nil against the All Blacks, keeping the All Blacks to nil, amazing. Let's also note 47 home games unbeaten by this All Black side before this game.
That's
and
amazing.
That is a stunning achievement by the All Blacks, but also a big win for the Lions. Now, the thing about the Lions, I said, is we saw more mojo in them. The changes, the things that Gatland was looking for, this is controversial, I know. I'm going to give them my man of the match to Mario Itoje. Now, in the New Zealand Herald, I saw they gave him 4 out of 10 and said he had a middling game. I thought, penalties aside, and we can talk about that, he did give away too many penalties, but for what Gatland needed to lift this team, from minute 1, Itoje was massive. Visual, loud, in their face, at everything, every kick tried to charge down. The whole game, he was revved up, going and getting that pack moving, and I thought he was exactly what the Lions needed.
Yes, he was, because Gatland made a point after the game to talk about he wanted more aggressiveness. They wanted to win the tackle contest. There's no doubt that Itoje came out and played that game. But Ben, I thought he was an absolute liability, and they were really lucky that he didn't get a red card.
Red card?
He was lucky.
Oh, come on.
Because he was pushing it at some point. Like, not for what he did, but at some point he was going to push himself over the limit. Now, he's a liability because he was costing so many. He could have cost him 1 million penalties. He was lucky he didn't. The referee was busy refereeing everyone else, but maybe a red for the night wasn't the case in terms of the way he played. However, that's where he's heading. That's what I mean. This guy was heading there, and he didn't know how to pull back. He made a lot of errors too with the ball, and I thought that, yes, he gave the aggressive nature to the team, but man, I was sitting there throwing stuff at the telly pen, saying, get this guy off the field because he's going to cost the Lions the game.
Look, where I will agree is that I think...
Don't you agree? Don't you think
I'll
he went over the line?
I'll get this in a second. I think Gatlin and Hansen both made errors in replacing from the bench, but I don't think Atoje coming off early would have been a good thing for the game. So Atoje, in that first 25 minutes in particular, and also further into the game, every single maul he was in the middle of digging. Every single defensive line, he was up there putting the hard hit on. He was, I think, monstrous, and I think that made a massive difference. Let's have a look at the two teams, right? I think in the front row, it was a fairly even matchup. I think it was pretty split. I think it was pretty split between the two. In the second row, Lions got the edge. Whitelock was quiet. Retallick was his usual busy self without being spectacular, as he was in game one. The Atoje, Wynne Jones, both hard, both went at it. And in the back row, you probably got to give that to the Lions too a little bit.
Yeah, although I'd say Sam Cane was enormous. Like
Sam
to me,
Cane had a
I
big
thought
game.
he was a big. I thought he had a better than big game. And I know you're going to talk about some players later on about their impact on the game. But I think Atoje did what the forwards had to do, and that's what they wanted, to win the collision zone against the All Blacks. But to do that, they had to manufacture this aggression, which means they're going to push the law to the nth degree. And I reckon he was heading for a card at some point.
And didn't get one. In a game where a lot of cards could have been handed out, right?
Yeah, and I think through maybe a bit of luck more than anything else, he needs to rein it in for the next match. And this is the difficulty. If you want to play aggressively against the All Blacks, you've got to make sure you're going to do it in a way that's not going to give you a yellow or red card. And there were some players that were lucky, not necessarily Atoje, because I think he would have been heading for it down the track. However, I think other players were lucky to stay on the field, given what happened to Sonny Bill Williams.
Okay. Let's talk about the dirty play, because there was a fair bit of it.
Yeah.
And it was actually one of the reasons this was a massive test match was because both teams were into it, right? It was a test match where no quarter expected, no quarter given. They hammered away each other. And I think Garces had a reasonable game, because I think it was a very hard match.
Agree.
Hard match to referee. You've got to start off...
It was good, but not great.
Yeah, you've got to start off with SBW. Every single day of the week and twice on Sundays, that is a red card. Yeah. If you're looking for an example of what the IRB, World Rugby, said they wanted to crack down on this year, we talked at the start of the year about the potential change to the way teams need to play and players need to play. That there, my friend, is textbook what the World Rugby guys are looking to stop.
Yeah.
No arms was already illegal, but to add in that, a clear shoulder to the face, and in slow-mo it always looks bad, but Watson's face just crumpled back. Sonny Bill had to go, completely the right decision.
And no Kiwis who know the game, and that's everyone who follows us on RuggaMatrix, have said that it's a bad decision.
No,
they agree with
fairly universal. I saw some early Twitter reactions from even blokes like Matt Gitto who said no, but wrong.
No, wrong. And in even going back to the old days, it was a pretty dodgy decision. But given the new laws, and the referee said himself, I have to protect the player. So the decision was right every day of the week. And good on all the Kiwis who supported the referee's decision there. They don't agree with the referee and other things, but Sonny Bill Williams deserved to be sent off. Now, was he the only one on the day that deserved to be sent off? That's the big question.
I think yes, but before we do, just run through a few of these other areas. I just want to talk a bit more about what happened there. Sonny Bill Williams put a crappy chip through. Felt bad about it.
Terrible.
Ran through, tackled Faletau, and was up immediately looking to make an impact and make, I think, amends for what he did. And he got that shoulder in there. My question for the viewers out there is, if you still got the game recorded, do me a favour, because at that point, 24 minutes, 39 seconds, you could see Garces came over with the red card. You could see Sonny Bill was quite distressed, walking away. But then he says something to the ref, and I couldn't work out what it was. I read his lips. I couldn't quite get it. Maybe it's me with my Kiwi pronunciations. But it's not a red, sir. He either said it's not a red, sir, or it's just on fact, sir, or just on fact, sir. So if you have the game, check it out for me. Let me know what you think. But that moment, enormous moment, changed the game for both teams. Puts expectation on the Lions, puts desperation in the All Blacks.
It's probably a good lesson. If you come up with a crap kick, you don't go around and shoulder charge someone to the head. That's not really making up for it.
He has shoulder charge form. Back in his league days, he was a specialist before they got onto that one.
It's a while ago. And in rugby league, if you're not aware of it, they banned the shoulder charge 5 years ago. The ultimate gladiatorial sport in footy banned the shoulder charge a while ago. They have struggled, though, Benny, to make sure it's rubbed out week to week because of old habits die hard. But it is out of league, and Sonny Bill should have got it out. I mean, you can get that out. It's something that's in him.
Yeah.
but it didn't need. That was almost deliberate the way he came round because you had to come around the corner a bit and then line him
Well,
up.
actually, Matt Giddo's tweet said it wasn't a red card because, and I thought this was a terrible excuse for it. He said, "Oh, he couldn't wrap his arm around because his other player was there," and I thought that's not really going to fly.
And it
Matt.
made it worse too. He was trapped. The guy was trapped. It was like holding onto him, and he wiped him out.
Yeah.
So I think the good thing too is that Steve Hansen didn't let him off the hook. He said that he did the wrong thing. He let his team down, and the team didn't lift as a result. They lifted, but they didn't win the match. But he didn't let him off with a little, rub on the head saying, "Bad luck, son.
Yeah.
You were hard done by." No, he did the wrong thing by the team. Paid the price too afterwards.
Yeah.
4
4
weeks.
weeks. And I think that's about right.
Yeah.
I think that's about right.
All
I think that's fair.
So to be fair, we have to talk about the other issues.
Yep.
And so the big question is, if Sonny Bill was sent off, why wasn't one of the Lions players?
For what? I thought, as I said, I thought it was refereed well. I'll talk about some of the other incidents quickly, right? Before I do, I just want to mention with Garces, I think clearly there was a chat with Garces from the Lions camp before the game because you look to see how these refs are refereeing. And there's 2 incidents in that early half, in that first half, where Garces was clearly having a look at something around that All Blacks ruck. The first penalty, the Lions kicked, I think, in the 22nd minute, you can see the ball goes back for an Aaron Smith box kick, and Itoje is trying to chase through and block, and Retallick steps directly in his path and he's pinged, right? And that's a penalty straight away, which is an unusual penalty to see, right? That blocking, if you will, around the ruck.
There were a couple of unusual penalties, actually.
There were. And then in the 38th minute, I think it was, Sam Cane is on the left-hand side of a ruck. He gets up, goes around to the right-hand side when he sees a box kick's about to come and positions himself to block again. I think it might have been Itoje, might not have been. Yeah. And the ref calls out and Gus says, Cane, or 7, move. And so it was ready to ping him. So I think the Lions had done their homework. Yeah. But even so, the penalties, far too many from the Lions. Yeah. I want to talk about
you
some
don't
of
think
those.
The referee could have done his homework?
I think he did, and I think he did.
Independently?
I think he could have. He could have. But, and also, there's a bit of talk. There was a bit of talk about where
the
All Blacks
talk about we're going to watch and crack down on this and that. But these aren't you shouldn't be cracking down on little things like that in a big test match like this. Yeah. Do that work in preliminary matches, right? Don't pull it out like surprising everyone.
Well, this is the reason why I think the referees are going to play a massive role in Game 3. I think it's Romain Point. I think he's got to, because of all the incidents and things that went on and whether they should have been called or not. There was a lot of focus on the physicality and the potential for cards in Game 2.
Would he have the guts to do what happened in the second test and red card someone with a shoulder?
I think he's going to have to be ready to do that because I think he's going to have to stamp himself on the game. But to talk about Garces again, 13-odd penalties, the Lions, they can't afford to keep giving those away. That's what cost them dearly. And I actually think there should have been a couple more against them. I thought there was a few high neck roll type grabs around the head that weren't picked up that probably should have been because they were so in the All Blacks' faces.
That's what I mean. Itoje, he did the job, but he went so far, he went over the top and could have been penalised more. That's why I say he could be heading for a yellow or maybe a red card down the track if he gets overly aggressive. So being aggressive is one thing against the All Blacks because the All Blacks are often criticised for getting away with so much aggressive play at the breakdown in particular. But if you're going to do that, you've got to be a bit more accurate. Now, if the weather was better, but I think we have a forecast for more wet weather, then you might be a bit more accurate in the breakdown. But that's where the Lions saw they had to win the collision. And they did to a certain extent. Yeah.
And look, and the one time that I saw the All Blacks make a really charged down field and carve up the Lions was in the 49th minute. There were 2 runs. Might have been A, L, B, and then Lamapi. But both of them, I thought, had obstructing All Blacks standing around making holes. But just to move on to the issues.
You're not back on your lazy runners again.
There were lazy runners, mate. The blokes were standing where they shouldn't have been that allowed them to get through. So just to talk to some of those other issues. Vunipola, he should have been dragged. When I talked about making errors in using his bench, he should have been taken off earlier. He started to lose it. Yeah. Some of his incidents, knocking Barrett over after the kick, very unlucky to get penalised there, particularly because Cody Taylor did exactly the same thing on Farrell up the other end. Right. And that was, if you're going to penalise one, you've got to penalise the other. Yep. Vunipola on Barrett at the ruck, cheap, targeted, stupid, deserving of a card.
So this is the decision, because he came down.
He landed on Barrett, and it was an obvious directed at Barrett, who was on the side of the ruck, and there was no rights to go at him, and dove on top of him.
I think Sean on our boards has posted a shot with both incidents together, making the comparison. Yeah. I don't think the incidents are of equal intensity, put it that way, but it is a cheap shot and deserves something for it.
Yeah, the yellow, right? Yeah. The yellow was the spot on there. And the other one, O'Brien, Now, I think if that had been picked up properly in the game,
Yep.
would have been a yellow. But I also don't think it was malicious. I think it looked accidental. And so I wasn't surprised when he got off at the tribunal because he came in and it looked awkward. He came in trying to wrap the ball up. Naholo's head were there. He gave him a whack, but I don't think it was attacking the head. But I think it's the kind of thing, again, the duty of care that means if it had been spotted properly at the time, probably should have been a yellow and could have changed the game.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the decisions decided the game too, in terms of tackling the player in the air. Now, we've had a lot of questions about this, and I mean, take us through it, Ben. It was just a travesty and a lot of hard luck.
Yeah, for a great test match, and whatever you think, thoughts about the controversy makes a great test match, but for a great test match, that was a very disappointing way to see it decided. You got to feel for Charlie Faumuina. Sinclair gets a high pass, a bit too high, jumps to take it. Faumuina is committed, set, ready to smash him, and just takes his legs out slightly in the air. Now, we know also, we talked about those other issues and incidents. Georgie Ayoub, the Australian ref, we've known him for years and years. He's one of he's a big stickler. He will always go to the letter of the law. And to the letter of the law, that is the correct call. Whether it's, the right call, I sincerely doubt. It's a very tough call. So it's a very tough call to decide that test match.
Yeah, and if you don't or not familiar with the law, it is that if you are in the air at any time, doesn't matter if you've got the ball or not, if you're taken out by a player while you're in the air, it is a penalty against you. So it was refereed to the letter of the law. In rugby league recently, Ben, we had this example in a game in Brisbane where a Manly player took the ball and it looked like a high ball, but it actually bounced before he took it.
Yeah.
Now, he was taken out, injured in the tackle, and this is why this is in rugby. He was injured in the tackle, was in the air, was taken out, right? But because the ball had bounced, in rugby league, he was fair game. In rugby, it doesn't matter if it bounces. If you jump up in the air, you will get the penalty if you're taken in the air. It's like protecting players in the line out, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Now, the big question is, and we've had it online, well, what's to stop you from jumping
in every tackle?
In a tackle?
Robert, I've got to shout out to Robert Manuel who put that, I think, on ours. He said he was confused about tackling a person who jumps to catch a pass. Does that mean if a player jumps over a ruck to score a try and they get tackled in midair, will it be a penalty or penalty try?
Yeah,
that's a fantastic question.
It is a good question.
Robert Manuel.
But what you'll find is the referee has discretion in dangerous play.
Yeah.
So if you jump into a tackler with your knees raised and your boots up, you're the guy who's going to get pinged. So that's a dangerous approach to the game.
Yeah.
So the rereferees can take care of...
But that's discretion, right? I think they should have not called that one.
Normally it's not called.
Yeah.
But it is
tough call.
It is in the laws of the game. And that's what I mean. A few of these things that haven't been sort of... I think brought out and adjudicated on for some time, including those players sort of blocking, was the frustrating thing. And for the test match to end like that, it was timing. Yeah. The timing was bad. But there's no way you can play a game running around, jumping around all the time, trying to get an advantage. Because defenders would pull out anyway.
Well, not if you're on the line. I think that's why they get.
Yeah, no, but he was committed. But he was committed.
I mean, if you're on the try line, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Someone jumps. I reckon that would be kind of interesting scenario. Just jump.
Jump. As Eddie says about the Italian effort in the Six Nations, it wasn't in the spirit of the game.
I thought he was out on a long. He was drawing a long bow there, Eddie.
But yes, it is. I don't think we're going to have a spate of people jumping up to milk a penalty. But if it does happen, let us know.
Remember that great old footage, and I think it was out of New Zealand many years ago, of a guy who ran up and over the scrum to try and score a try.
Oh, I love it.
He gets tackled jumping off the back of that. Another point to talk about is we mentioned the forwards briefly in the battle there and how intense it was. In the backs, the All Blacks, now this might be a little controversial for some of our Kiwi readers, but I think the team as a whole worked like the All Blacks machine. I don't think we saw anyone in particular stand up and have a great game. And normally in an All Blacks game, you can point to 2 or 3 guys and say, outstanding, outstanding, outstanding. This time, their system still worked, and they put in. Blokes like Kieran Reid had their usual work rate, but no one stood up. And that was particularly the case in the backs. The backs did not have a particularly happy game. Beauden Barrett, his kicking game tactically was quite poor. And even when Cruden took over that last-minute kick to the sidelines, they weren't kicking well. I think Hansen after the game said he'd like to have seen some more long kicking towards the end of the game. But essentially, there were chip kicks, there were cross kicks at the wrong time when normally they time those so well, and they just didn't play the game tactically particularly well. I think they were, clearly a bit rattled and a bit affected by Sonny Bill Williams going off. And the error too from Hansen to put Lamalpi straight on for Kano. Wet game, forward's important, made the call to put a rookie into such a situation in his first game. He got found out a couple of times too. Found out.
So it's not a bad point that no one stood out, but I actually thought Sam Cane was a bit of a standout for me. I thought he had a great game. And the reason why you don't have that, the 9.5 out of 10 in the player ratings is simply because of the Sonny Bill decision, because the New Zealanders weren't ready for it. Steve Hansen said as much after the game. They had not planned for it. And when you consider
Well, obvious,
between
clearly,
50 years between red cards.
That's right. Colin Meads, 1967, the last guy to get a red card for the All
So
Blacks.
the All Blacks don't particularly plan on losing a player for the whole game or most of the game and playing like that. And as a result, I think they scrambled to make it up on the run. And clearly with the use of the bench that you pointed out before, they were still thinking, well, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Do we need more forwards or backs in this to play the game out? How do we do this?
He chose backs, right? He chose backs.
So what do? You shove a bloke on the side of the scrum when you need to.
Well, that was Anton Leonard-Brown. And when he went to pack in for the first time, he was way too far up. They had to push him back and say, mate, you're actually packing back here.
So all that combined to make sure that no one could have a standout game because they were sort of making it up as they went along. It's a bit weird considering the professional nature of the All Blacks, but it's such a rare thing. Firstly, losing a player, and secondly, just losing a game at home. What was the record before that?
47 games straight.
Yeah.
So in the backs in particular, I think they lost Sonny Bill. That caused some issues. Lamalpi was new. But even so, you've got to look at that back three. Naholo didn't have a happy game. Ioane was not very involved on a really wet track. Dag, we mentioned he dropped a few for the Crusaders. He dropped the first ball that went his way. He didn't have a happy game.
No.
Then you've got to talk about Anton Leonard-Brown also. The backs were quite, not pedestrian, but they weren't up to their usual standards. We marked them very highly, the All Blacks, and they weren't up to their usual standards.
And
they didn't make inroads.
Yeah.
Well, once they got into the 10 metres, once or twice, they didn't make the inroads.
Because the All Blacks forwards were more sucked into that, because they didn't have the go forward they're usually used to. They were sucked into this epic forward battle, right, against the Lions. And as a result, the backs aren't getting the ball they want. They've had to come in and chip in as well. Yeah. And, at the back, they're missing, and it's a big impact. They're still missing, I believe, and it played a big impact, Ben Smith at the back.
Most definitely.
Because he calms everything down.
I said at the start of the series, I thought he was the All Blacks' most important player. Not only does he calm things down, but he switches out with Barrett. His cover at the back is exceptional. His positional play, etc. And I think that there's a couple of challenges now for Hansen, right? Clearly, I don't think he'll switch anything up in the forward pack. But in the backs, he's got to pick his centres. He's brought Fekitoa back in, and you'd have to say he's got to think about Leonard-Brown and Fekitoa, the Dublin combo, to try to settle down and give some experience in that midfield.
I think he needs to settle.
He does.
Yes.
And picking Goodhue or giving Lamalpi another go would be an interesting call. Yeah. And, the word is, in most of the press, surely he'll go Fekitoa, but we don't know.
Yep.
Dag and the backs, he's got to think about Julian Sevilla coming back and giving him a bit more than Naholo did on the side. And Dag there. But I think one of the things that and I don't know whether it'll be this game, but that will be important for the All Blacks in future, is I think Geordie Barrett has to be a bench pick. And the reason I do is because they've had, now in the first two games, they've had backline issues, right? Crotty's gone, SBW's gone, etc. Ben Smith's gone. When they have backline issues, the way they work it is they bring Cruden in and they put Barrett back. And I don't think that's serving them well. Cruden's a great player, but I think they need that consistency of Barrett in the front line, and Dag at fullback doesn't give you as much.
Yeah. So just on Cruden, the decision, and I cannot stand it when players do this. You can be a hero, but mostly you've got to make sure you have possession until you absolutely have to get the ball up. But in the last moments of the game, Cruden does the cross kick. It was a Hail Mary play, didn't come off. They lose possession, and every last moment or every chance they had of winning that test match in the last moments went out the window. To me,
it was very uncharacteristic.
It was a stupid play.
Yeah.
It was just...
It looked like panic stations.
Yeah.
Instead of what they've done so well for a while now, which is beautifully execute the right kick at the right time, that one looked like panic stations.
The great teams will play it to the last minute.
Yeah.
And I used to love actually working with the Wallabies when we had a team that had confidence and had plays in the back of their pocket ready to roll out for that moment. We got a minute to play. This is what we got to do. Go back to Noddy Liner back in 1991 in the World Cup. Just the plays ready to go to save the test match. So that to me also indicated, Ben, that the All Blacks weren't quite right on the night. They were a bit frazzled by the physical demands of playing the Lions, and whether the Lions can do it again is the big question.
The Lions will need to step up again. Back to Eden Park, where the record's ridiculous in terms of victories. But back to Eden Park, no Coles, no Crotty, no SBW, no Ben Smith. So a lot of blokes in there and a lot of things to work out, particularly when I think the All Black coaches will look back and think they got jumpy with the use of their bench last week.
Just goes to show the depth in that place is amazing.
Yeah, but also it was exposed a little bit, right? Through Lamapi. He wasn't quite there. He might develop there, but he wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
So the Lions, but let's talk about them for a second, because they look like they might have more in them, because they did come out firing. The Farrell-Sexton combo worked. Sexton in his first 10 minutes, showing the ball, holding it out, kicking, deceptive guys. He and Farrell combined nicely to deceive Lamapi at times in the game, him rushing up. And I thought the combo there worked for them, and they also contained them as much as they can in defence. So they did unleash a bit more of that midfield.
That, they do need to get someone like Bentio in the team. At some
you think
point.
they need to start with him? I don't think they will.
No, not starting with him, but he needs to be in there because he's a massive impact
player. And that's the use of the bench, I mean. I think Gatlin could have brought him in that second half and had an impact.
Could you imagine him coming through midfield, storming through? Players are tired, and this bloke knows how to win.
But the question.
I don't know.
Sexton and Farrell are both going well.
Yeah, you can get rid of one of them because you've still got a playmaker there.
Yeah.
You know, a really good playmaker. So I mean, it's either or really.
Mate, but O'Brien had a good game as well.
Yeah.
Davies, Farrell and Sexton all played good, solid game, and then the back three backed them up.
Look, the Lions have shown at times when they get the chance, they want to play with the footy.
Yeah.
And their first try was exceptional. If you wanted to have a highlight for your try against the All Blacks, you couldn't have picked a better opportunity than that. That was fantastic. And then Conor Murray's brilliant read to score the try. Left a few Kiwis upset there.
TJ Perinara has to pull his head in a bit.
He did pork chop himself.
He's turning into a real whinger on the field far too much. And at that point, he was claiming his foot was held. He got sold a beautiful dummy. And Murray did what we asked for after test one, which was he said Murray has to just stop with all the box kicks and look for more options. Unleash the outside guys, go himself, paid dividends.
Yeah, he is good at the boxing.
Tries.
Yeah, I hate box kicking when it's not done right, and most of the world doesn't do it right, but he does do a good job generally. Yeah. But he was fantastic with ball in hand and reading what's in front of him. I thought they handled it really well considering some of the conditions. Toje's a couple of dropped cold when he was heading the line were poor because you've just got to cherish the football in those conditions. I've said before in the show, even though it's raining, Ben, the players often say that it's easier in those conditions to hold the ball than the hot, sweaty day because you get all that sweat on the footy and on the jersey and it just slips off. Yeah. But you can make a conscious effort to make sure you rein that football in. But it is because it tends to wash that slipperiness off the ball. So you're just dealing with water, not all that grimy crap that comes off your chest.
Yeah, yeah,
so to speak.
What else? just one more little theme out of there is this Lions tour. For a start, I'd heard people saying, or there were reports that the Lions tours might be finishing up. Rubbish. Fantastic. Look at the people there. Look at the enjoyment they're having. I don't think they needed to win that game to make Lions tours the pinnacle of rugby or one of the pinnacles of rugby. You know, I've been watching rugby and I was a journo for 12 years covering rugby. And the Lions in 01 is one of the best rugby experiences I've ever had, those 3 games. I think it's a fantastic event.
Yeah.
But the thing also, I think that...
I was in the coach's box for all of them, mate.
You were too. That would have been an interesting ride.
It was an interesting ride.
But one of the little themes I want to pull out is the young blokes in this Lions tour who are making a name for themselves and who are building a confidence in playing the All Blacks. Have a think about guys like Jamie George, Kyle Sinclair, Maro Itoje, the lack of fear they'll have when they come back with England. And also have a think about a guy like Sexton, who in the last year has played the All Blacks 3 times, beaten them twice, and got knocked out and taken off early in the other game that they got pipped in Ireland.
You take that every day of the week.
Yeah, so there are people that are building, you know, for the North Hemisphere guys, a lot of good, solid belief in taking on the best team in the world. Yeah,
no, it was terrific. Ireland with Johnny Sexton doing a great job, and they will go back and they will want to take on the opposition with renewed confidence after taking the All Blacks. They know, there's a lot of talk to Ben about England would have been a better option to knock off the All Blacks because of their continuity with combinations in the team. rather than bringing together this Lions side. You know, you'd have to think, what if you had this Lions team together for a couple of months and you could really fashion a great team? It'd be unbelievable, but they're running out of time. They've only got one test to go, and I think that chat about the Lions comes out of all the lead-up games where the results really don't matter. It matters for the people who are obviously playing there and having a good time, but in the end, it's all about the test matches. So by the time you get to the test matches, everyone says, do we really want that? Well, after the second test, all that chat has gone out the window, and rightly so.
One more point to make about the game. We said after test one that Farrell came in there with the reputation of being a fantastic goal kicker, Barrett being patchy, and in that game it was Farrell who blinked. This time it was absolutely Barrett. You know, a couple of those 3 missed kicks, 2 of them from dead in front that he should have been knocking over in his sleep. Very costly in a tight game when you're down a man. And so that is going to be very interesting to see where Barrett's head's back at with his goal kicking.
All right, so we move to the third test now. And our predictions?
Look, I'm still going to tip the All Blacks. I think at home, Eden Park, fired up after a loss, you'd have to expect them to come out and win by about 10 points. But I'm not putting it beyond on the Lions to rip in and make a real game of it. Yeah,
I think the Lions will come hard at them, but they talked about poking the bear afterwards, Warren Gatland, about beating New Zealand and firing them up, and I think they have. So I think as a result, you will see an amazing contest at the breakdown. The Kiwis probably have to bring something tactically to that. It won't just be ferocious physically, but they have to be careful about what they do in the backs. They need to use their space, which they're renowned for, and their speed.
Mate, selections are going to be fascinating for this test. I think Gatland will look to pick the same team. He'll look, I'd be surprised if he tinkers. He may look for something, but to ride that wave of belief, I wouldn't be surprised if he picks the the same team. Will the All Blacks? Is it going to be pull the panic switch, big changes in the back line? You'd have to think they might revert to type. You'd have to think it'll be ALB and Fekatoa. I'd love to see Geordie Barrett come into the team in some way, but that back three as well, is he going to switch back out again? Don't know, but fascinating.
They're used to winning though, Ben, and I think the All Blacks, having slipped up against the Lions in the second test, will come back with a vengeance. So I'm also tipping the All Blacks to win, but geez, you never know in the conditions, and the referee will probably have a big influence. If there are a couple of pedantic decisions, then the Lions come straight back into it, I reckon. Especially with their lethal boot.
The ref will be a big factor because of game two.
And I thought the ref had a good game last week, but he had the tendency to parade around a bit of prancing there, which takes you back to the Steve Walsh days about, he wasn't a bad ref, but geez, he just loved the limelight. We're not there to see the referees. Just sit in the background and let the play go. You can just intervene when you have to. But if they want to get physical against each other, be prepared to pay the price. And if you slip up and hit a head, you can't get away with that anymore.
That's right.
So you could look at another Sonny Bill-like decision if they don't heed the warnings. Just swing it wide. Do what the All Blacks do. Cool. But the Lions can swing it wide too. So let's wait and see. But I can't wait, mate. It's going to be fantastic. Epic.
Big game.
Epic.
And it rolls into the Waratahs too. I think I might go for the doubleheader there.
All right. So, Benny, thanks for that wrap up there on the test match. Let's move on to Super Rugby. And I watched some of the highlights at the weekend, and geez, there's some abysmal tackling in the Sunwolves game against the Lions. Just incredible. But go through some of the scores here, Ben. Absolutely atrocious.
Well, Bulls 30, Sharks 17. Kings big win over the Jaguares. 31-30. That's good to see. That team under adversity has really stood up a few times. So that is a big win for the Kings. Stormers 40 over the Cheetahs 34. And the ouch one, Lions 94, Sunwolves 7. So the Sunwolves copping another battering. I think the Canes went over there and gave them a touch-up. But, mate, 94 points, which shows the Lions are in great nick. But it also, if you're sitting there as a team that's about to get punted and you're thinking, well, they're hanging on to the Sunwolves, you're not feeling too good about it. That's got to be an investment in the future of the game, you would have to think.
I said on our aborted show that they should be kicked out of the comp for that loss alone. And I stand by that. It was disgraceful. Defence is about attitude, and they had no attitude. They didn't turn up at all. They left them at customs. It was, I don't want to demean under-10s, but it wasn't even as good as under-10s rugby in defence. It was terrible, mate. And some of the tries that the Lions scored were very good, but there was poor refereeing there too, that they probably shouldn't have been allowed to score a couple of them with infringements there. But it was embarrassing. They were running. It was a really good training run in terms of the Lions. And some of the players who had been doing well for the Springboks in the previous weeks have just come straight back out and continue to play well. That's what the Lions have done for South African rugby.
Yeah. It is so disappointing to see, but what it really does highlight is that gap between the top teams and the bottom teams, and the problems with Super 18. Too many teams, too spread around, not enough talent in the right places, and that right there says, God, can we get back to a Super 12 day when there was talent in every team or thereabouts, and they went well. Out of this though, 2 quick points. The rumour we talked about a few weeks ago seems to be kind of getting stronger. Kings and Cheetahs to the Pro 12 in Europe, that would be massive.
Yep.
And that could precipitate more change down south, you would think, if that is a super success.
Yes.
Apparently, as we said before, those 2 teams aren't too upset about the prospect of playing in the same time zone in a rich competition.
Absolutely. Now, we've got the scoreboards in front of us here, but if you did a quick addition here, you'd be getting a lot of points up very quickly about for and against. And you know, Super Rugby is about attacking rugby, but we also want to see defence. You know, that makes an exciting game, and we just didn't see much of it. Even in the other games that were also exciting and very close, some of the defence, Ben, was pretty poor. And I've got to say, good for the Bulls though. You know, the Bulls came back, and Serfontaine was outstanding, and he continued his good form from the Test series as well.
They've got some players going
I kept
well,
saying,
South
like,
Africa.
coming out of the Test series, the players have come in, and you can see something happening there in South Africa. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So they're starting to get fired up. So the All Blacks, after having dealt with the Lions, are going to have a pretty pumped up Springbok team to deal with.
Yep.
Where Australia and Argentina are going to be there by the time the Rugby Championship comes around, I don't know. But South Africa will certainly be a bigger force this year as a result. What else in the... I mean, I found the other thing about those Super Rugby games is that we are quickly looking at matches that don't seem to mean much. And I know for some local teams, particularly in South Africa, the Currie Cup means more than Super Rugby in particular, because they're mostly composite teams. But in the end, you see these big results and it pushes away from a tight competition. I've always wanted to have a Super 10, Super 12, teams have to earn the right to play in that comp, and that is going to see a great home and away competition. At the moment, we're just seeing this sort of fractured competition over different provinces, and you know, the Brumbies will get in, and if you look at the ladder on all the rights, they shouldn't be there.
The Stephen Bradbury.
The Stephen
For
Bradbury,
those of you who don't know
fall
that,
across
Google
the line.
that.
Yeah.
Stephen Bradbury in Australian sport, very famous.
And you know, and Australia's been criticised by the Kiwis as a result, and they should be, because you know, they really deserve to be there on points.
Speaking of being criticised by the Kiwis, I might segue us into Checker Watch.
Oh yeah, Checker Watch, yeah.
The Checker Watch this week is not so much about Checker because the Wallabies didn't play, but it's hoping that he watched the way that Gatlin and Hansen handled themselves during the week. They didn't get it right all the time. They got a little bit snippy. I think Stuff got coded on NZ, called it a war of words, which it never was. There was a little bit of biting, but a couple of things. Gatlin, they rolled out the clown picture. Gatlin said, not a problem for me, and you know, he said, you know, the All Blacks aren't stressing us. I think he said after the second test, which is a big call. But Hansen in particular did his interview the morning after the game. There's a couple of quotes that I want to pull out because he was, I thought, you know, honest, straightforward. You know, talked about what was not working for them. You know, and one of the questions he was asked was, how do you feel after the Chicago defeat to Ireland compared to this? How do you draw on that? He said the difference in Chicago was that it was an attitudinal problem. One of Link's favourite words, you and Mackenzie's.
Loves
well,
it.
we had a couple
Big
of big
Link.
boys out and won 8 in a row. We got the Chicago, a big sigh of relief after getting the record, and they were too comfortable. So he basically said they became tourists rather than a team on tour, was the quote. Last night was totally different. The game against the Lions, it was attitudinal. They were one short and playing good side, and they have to learn how to play smarter in those situations.
Yeah, no, good point. In fact, you stole what I was going to introduce this week, my spin analysis segment, going back on the days of being the Wallabies and Waratahs spin doctor. I thought it'd be pretty good for our audience to learn in a segment, which we'll probably have to get a sponsor for as well. Strike can't sponsor everything. But looking at the spin that goes behind the scenes and what the coaches are actually trying to do. And, you know, we had a lot of meetings back in the day about how to approach things in press conferences, and having a look at Eddie Jones's Oxford interview that someone shared, one of the guys, I'm sorry I didn't see who it was, but I will give them credit later on, shared the interview on our Facebook page, the chat at Oxford. And he and I used to talk a lot about the tactics, as with Bob Dwyer and Rob McQueen, but half the time they just go and say something anyway and get you in trouble. So there will be a spin zone, a spin
I'm
analysis.
looking forward to it. I want the inside word.
Because, Benny, we used to deal together. I was on the
and
other
you used
side.
to spin to me, my friend.
I used to do a little bit of spinning, but you were hard to trick, mate. You were hard
Thanks,
to trick.
big man.
Yeah.
You're still doing it, too.
See, there you go. So we'll be producing some secrets of the trade from the spin section. But good point. Remember how the Wallabies carried on after the Clown Gate? When Gatlin had a photo or a piece of artwork of him being a clown, he just brushed it off beautifully, and then Hansen went into into bat for him by giving it to his own newspaper.
I mean, as we'll say it again, but Checker was off the rails to discuss it, to blow up about it. A newspaper that has nothing to do with anything. They report from the sidelines, and he made it the centerpiece. It looked desperate, and it looked like a transparent attempt to manipulate the team or something. And it just didn't sit well. It was one of the big issues we talked about.
In my earlier, angrier days, I probably would have used it as motivation, but I don't think I would go anywhere near it when I got a bit older.
Maybe internally, right?
Yeah.
Maybe inside the sheds, not in a press conference about a game you just lost.
But externally, I would have said, laugh it off, have a good time.
That's right.
Do not give it any credibility. I just can't. It was very juvenile, I thought, from the Wallabies to get involved with that. And as a result, they lost the test match. Well, not as a result, but I don't think it helped anyway.
They lost respect.
All right. What else you got for us, mate?
Okay. I'm just going to run through the viewer comments of the week. As always, we love comments, guys. They get us thinking. You can see sometimes we bring them up in the show because you've made great points. So please comment, like, subscribe, share it in any Facebook groups or share it with friends. We love it, and we really do appreciate it when you do. Shout outs to Sean McTaggart, who did a great post on the challenge ended up facing for the third test. Jared Thorne, who called out Vunipola, could have gotten 2 yellows and should have been dragged earlier. Cody Reddy. Cody Reddy made a massive shout out to the fans in red. He travelled home. He travelled home to NZ from Northern Ireland for that, and said he thinks he might be the jinx.
Great effort.
Clint Summers said, "Well done. Finally, some interest in a rugby series." Pete Walters and Joe Robertson also got involved. Tony Lane, Niall Keeley said the Lions won't win with the penalty count they conceded, and I think you're spot on there, mate. Tony Lane also said that new game plan, jump into every tackle. And there was plenty more comments, and I try to get to them all. Apologies if I haven't, but I will do.
All right, thank you very much, Ben Kimber. It was a great week online, so much chat. So thanks for joining us on the live stream the other night. We had a few technical hitches, connectivity.
This is a bonus second show.
So we got the bonus second show out. So we sort of covered the same ground, but in particular, this is for our YouTube audience as well.
We'll be on Facebook too.
And I know you wanted to mention something too.
I did. I want to shout out to those listening on iTunes. Numbers have really started to rock. I think we've really started to see a bounce in subscribers there. So thanks, guys. And we'd love you to rate the show if you can. Give us a rating. It helps.
Yeah, so unfortunately the audio stream dropped off for a while. I know our Twitter viewers and listeners, or the Twitter audience, loves the iTunes feed, which also goes to an Android podcaster catcher if you've got that. So please get on their iTunes and put a few comments, because that one's been lying dormant for a little while, Benny. So we need you to spark that one up a bit, please, and get us going again. But we have backfilled all those episodes on iTunes. So it's starting to heave again. And a reminder, there's no standard definition feed now on iTunes at all for video. It is all the HD feed. So you'll get the best quality version of this show will be on iTunes. There you go.
Or Rugby Pass. Shout out the Rugby Pass
download.
guys. Shout out the Rugby Pass guys too.
And yes, the Rugby Pass guys. We love you, Rugby Pass. Thanks for coming on board.
Lots of good feedback on that.
Righto, okay. So thanks, Benny. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, mate. Good chat.
All right, there he is, Ben Kimber. Thanks for joining us this week. Well, we look forward to the final test match in New Zealand. I have got a trip supposedly to Barcelona next week, so we might be doing the show on Sunday.
Yep.
So join us. I'll have a note out later in the week, but it could be a Sunday special. Keep an eye out on all of our social media themes. You'll be right for Sunday?
I'll be good.
You'll be still pumped?
I'll be pumped.
All right, okay, let's go. All right, that is it for RuggaMatrix International Part 2 for this week. We hope you enjoyed the show, as we say every week. Enjoy your rugby.